Are men honest in their sexuality? Are you able to express your true and authentic sexuality? Maybe you're harboring some shame about your private, unique desires. Today's speaker will help you to decode your kink and feel empowered in your unique, personal sexual expression. Welcome to the Men in Love Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Goodstone. In this event, you will hear from thought leaders on the forefront of knowledge and experience about men and love. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Galen Fous. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Erica, and with our audience, and great topics that you're creating here. And I love that you've turned the focus more towards the men's side of the view here, and I'm happy to participate in that.
And you did say something, before I ask about your background, you did say something about how much this is needed with all the contentious stuff going on in our society.
I think that everybody, it boils down to the topic here is men in love, or the summit that you're creating here is men in love. And I think that is really getting to the heart of it, in that men, in my experience, just want to be loved. You know, we start as children wanting to be loved. We grow into old and elders still wanting to be loved and also wanting to be loving. And that, in the culture we're in now, which has become so contentious and polarized and suspicious and mistrusting, and these harsh narratives are what's driving the conversation. And behind that is this really deep yearning still that I don't want to fight. You know, I don't want to harm anyone. You know, my heart is yearns to love and be loved. At the bottom of it all, men and women both are in that. And so I think this conversation needs to be turned back in that direction so we can see our connections and our natural sweetness for each other, not these harsh, vindictive, vicious accusations, you know, that I think are just overboard. You know, that's not the men and women I see in my life every day. But the media conversation makes it appear that, whoa, we're at war with each other in you know, the gender sense, the sexual sense, the political sense. And I am happy to turn the conversation back to a more peaceful dialogue.
Thank you. All right, so tell us briefly about your background and training and what makes you qualified and knowledgeable about men and love.
Well, I think everybody takes this journey of life and takes their lumps along the way. And we either, you know, the old school masculine was just kind of tough it out. You know, if you were hurt or wounded in some way, that you just lean on your own spine, you know, be self-reliant and be strong enough to take those hits and keep on going. And that's great when you're in this fierce energy of your youthfulness. You know, you can be very strong and carry the load. But by the time we hit our 40s and such, that load gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can't hold up this facade of this invincible masculine any longer, as I experience it. And that's the time to set that load down and start to open up to how you heal yourself, how you've hidden or not been responsible or accountable, or the ways you've been out of integrity in your life to that point that's kind of led to that burden probably to begin with often. And so in my journey, you know, I did what I said at the beginning for most of into my 40s until I finally got broken. You know, the load was too big and I had to stop and go, wow, what am I about here? So I got involved with a group called the Mankind Project, which is a non-denominational organization that operates on the principle that a man's got a code that he can follow. And that is about being in integrity, being accountable, being responsible, being honest, transparent, you know, being honest emotionally, and having a mission, you know, that's bigger than the self, that one can be in service in the world. And so that really had resonated with me perfectly, and that really was where my heart was along the way. And I got involved with that. I got they do some amazing ritual processes and depth psychology oriented things, which kind of really resonated with me. At the same time, I was emerging into sexual honesty, which was bringing me to the fact that, yeah, I was a kink-oriented man, you know, as a dominant, as an erotic sadist, you know, and I say that clearly as in a consensual, negotiated way with an eager partner. Anything in kink is always, when it's done consciously, is a negotiated, consensual process that opens one to an amazing ecstatic depths that aren't available if you're not willing to step deeper into that territory. So while this was emerging, both my sexuality and my authentic masculinity, I started working in terms of where I started facilitating a lot of things on these weekends that were going on, and then started working with people kind of off the cuff, so to speak, and then that spurred me to go back. I went back to grad school and got a master's degree in transpersonal psychology, again, which brought in all of these depth psychology, analytical psychology, symbol, myth, archetype, all of which was really forming this model I work from in terms of how to help people integrate, if they are a kink-oriented or alternative sexuality as their norm, their baseline, then how to empower that, you know, because you want to be proud, you know, it's your birthright to step into that and in the fullest way possible. And at the same time, that also means you're going to address all the decades of reason why you hid it or didn't own it in an honest, healthy way. So in other words, untangling shame, fear, internal judgments, or traumas that might have happened along the way that are holding back or resisting your full expression of your sexuality.
So you describe it as our birthright. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I think our sexuality is personal, I believe. You know, and it also is collective, because within this, my personal, I find, well, there's a lot of others like me out in the world. So I think just like someone who's a gay or a lesbian, transsexual, I look at part of my work is to establish what I call fetish sexuality as an authentic sexual identity, i.e. it's in the gene pool, you know, as a certain percentage of the gene pool that is someone's innate, natural, it's as inherent as their eye color and you know, and his name and their fingerprint. You know, it's totally unique. So they get to decide how it looks for them. They don't just even decide. They know how it looks for them. These are innate, internalized psychological, sexual, psychological structures, as I believe, that activate you know, through the developmental process. Many people who are fetish sexuals, as I call them, this came alive in them well before puberty. So in other words, there's a difference between eros and sexuality, you know, biological reproduction and carrying on the species. There's a broad dimension of sexuality that's overlooked and not thought of, and this is what I call eros. And this has been emerging like never before in the history of civilization in the last 20 or 30 years. It's a phenomenon that has just burst forth.
But it's been in the literature in the past. What comes to mind, the Marquis de Sade, but lots of the literature showed that type of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not new in the sense of, so it's kind of like the jet set of every age, you know, got to indulge in their decadence and their, you know, hedonistic pleasure-seeking lust and such, but not the masses. So this is what I'm talking about. This huge shift now is like the internet has opened it up to the sexual psyche is coming forth, bubbling up through the internet in terms of the imagery and the symbols and the different types of narratives that are showing up in porn, basically, and other sexual media signals that are out there. And it's awakening where before, one, people didn't have access to those signals externally, and also they didn't have permission or safety to open up to that and explore. But now with the anonymity of the internet, the sexual psyche is able to come forth and explore and experiment, and eventually many millions and millions of people are crossing that threshold of secrecy and stepping into, yeah, I'm going to go to the munch, the kink conference, have a play date, so 50 Shades of Grey, whatever, 125 million copies sold is just a kind of an indicator of the interest in power exchange oriented sexual connections. These are primal, instinctual energies as well.
Mm-hmm. And so why do you say that it's time to take our sexuality out of the shadows?
Sexual dishonesty is like a pandemic in the culture right now. What I talk about of this explosion is still in a very adolescent stage. So it's basically irresponsible and out of control and not transparent, not in integrity in many ways. The desire is so, compelling that people don't, and we haven't taught people how to be sexually honest, be sexual in integrity with your sexuality, in engagement with others. And so this is the next phase of what I feel is important, is this level of kind of normalizing that, yeah, you can explore your sexuality. You have your birthright, whatever that looks like for you, as long as you're doing it in a consensual way, in a healthy way, in a mature way, that's in integrity with your agreements with your partners and your own personal codes, etc.
Right. But the problem is your partner may not agree, and it may not be safe for you to express it with a particular partner.
Yeah. Well, this is this is all these pieces of the puzzle here, because part of the problem, that's what you just defined as what I call erotic mismatches, which happens because we have an outdated dating protocols that people don't discuss their sexuality. I encourage people, first date, bring it right to the front. Yeah, I'm kinky. I'm into dominance and BDSM. And how about you? Just you have every right to say that right out of the gate, because why go months with someone and then try to say that and they go, what? Well, you wasted a couple of months of life to...
I would say it happens because it can be difficult. You don't find too many people you like, and you finally find a person who's got the kind of education you like and the background, and they look good. There's a lot that's good.
Yes. But I think you're fishing in the wrong pond. If you're kinky, don't just go out to the local nightclub or the gym or something and think you're going to meet someone who's going to, maybe all the other things like you just said, they're very educated. I love the way they're educated, or their hobbies or their background, all the stuff there. But, they're not kinky. They wouldn't accept, or they would even judge my desire. I want to know that day one, if you're not. So in other words, if you think you are of an alternative sexuality, there's plenty of social media sites and dating sites and online sites that you can start into a pool that's, you're already there, with others of like mind. So that's where you want to go to find a partner. If you're just hanging out in kind of the quote unquote vanilla world, and it's like being a gay man going into a straight bar. Am I going to find my love here?
Wow, that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
So, what stops men from expressing their authentic sexuality?
Well, I created a psychological disorder that's not in the DSM, but I call it sexual authenticity disorder. And that is the fear of revealing or someone else discovering what the true depth of your sexuality might be. This is a huge problem in our culture. Most people it's such a huge problem. It's amazing that the psychological community hasn't noted that and made it here. We need to help people, support them to get sexually authentic. You know, they have the birthright to be sexually authentic, but we've made it in a culture that is so sex negative. Why we get in relationships where we didn't have that conversation at the start of the conversation about what our sexual desire looked like, that, and we have the vilification of anything outside of the quote unquote normal, you know, especially on men. You know, men are cast as sexual predators by nature, even in a lot of the narratives that are out there now. So men are literally afraid to be honest about their sexual desires, even with a loving partner. So this has led men to, and women both in this regard, take their sexuality into shadow. And in shadow, it operates in secretive, sneaky, in out of integrity, dangerous, risky ways. And this is, you know, that you see all the continual stream of politicians, sports figures, celebrities, ministers, preachers getting busted in their sexual dishonesty. And then there's this fall from grace. I mean, it's like a mythic story playing out in your life. So those are the tip of the iceberg, though, like in terms of this is going on over and over and over and over, people getting inevitably busted for their sexual dishonesty. And then it's a horrifying shaming and kind of inquisitional assault on them, when the problem isn't that they're addicted to porn or they're hypersexual or they're out of control that way. The problem is they don't know how to be sexually honest and just say to their partner, this is how often I like sex. This is, you know, the type of sex I like. And then start from there. Okay, so let's negotiate. How can I want to honor your authentic sexuality? It's different from mine. If I'm in a relationship, you know, so that other partner can't try to suppress or stop or vilify or, you know, prevent that authentic sexuality in their partner. The best thing would be to acknowledge it, embrace it, and then figure out what you can live with. You know, even to the point where, wow, maybe we're not meant to be together.
Yeah, a lot of times they're not meant to be together. One has desires that would directly hurt the other person. Although I've also seen that the partner might be willing to cooperate if that partner feels loved and validated. But the person doesn't validate them, just wants their kink to be satisfied. That doesn't work.
Yeah, so that works both ways. Exactly what you said, what I just described. And if I was the partner who is saying, I have a boundary now, I have to, you know, my expression is this, to realize, well, look, I'm in this relationship with you. I'm not going to just, you know, I'm negotiable. Let's work out. So, for instance, hey, what if I looked at porn for, say, you know, 5 times a week and jacked off and got off, and okay, I'd be good. And I still have our loving relationship, and, you know, we do all the things that we do, and I'm grateful that you blessed me with that space to somehow cope with it. Or, wow, let's, what do you think about some polyamorous or kind of, you know, casual encounters, you know, out in the world, you know, so those are some bridges that could be there for people to negotiate something that honors each partner's sexuality and also allows for it while keeping the relationship together. You know, that's complicated. Sexuality is complicated. Being sexually authentic is about the most complicated thing you can take on.
Yes, because you feel embarrassed and you feel like, why am I in this relationship? This person's sick. And you have all these value judgments. And if you tell it to family and friends,
yes,
they will say, oh, how could you be with that and all that.
Yeah, it's a terrible shaming culture that we are in. And you know, these are harmless activities. In fact, they're not harmless. They are ecstatically potent, life-enhancing experiences if you can open up to them. That's the tragedy of this. I mean, the people see. There's this thing I call the sexual wilderness area. You know, and this is where people, this is the unexplored territory of the sexual psyche. And our culture has barely looked at the sexual psyche and understood the psychological depths of our sexuality. So we project onto the wilderness all the boogeymen, the devil, the evil, the dark, ruinous path that you won't come back alive from that, or you'll be scarred for, all of those kinds of fears get projected on this area that's really an amazingly pristine, treasure trove of ecstatic sexual experience. Now, it's not without risk like anything else. You need to be educated. You need to be informed to go into that territory. You need to be making mature adult choices as you go. You need to be accepting responsibility for the choices you make and be accountable for the choices you make. So, but if you follow some basic rules, I mean, a lot of people go out and explore the wilderness. It's a peak experience, to explore the wilderness. So I really want to just encourage people to the fear is there, but also something is compelling you. It hasn't gone away. I mean, I have clients, come to me, they're in their 50s saying like, well, for 5 decades now, I've hidden who I am. And it's like, don't wait another minute to embrace your authentic sexuality and learn how to start expressing it in an honest, consensual, negotiated way.
And that is devastating to a long-term partner, to suddenly have the person come out to the truth rather than having told their partner much earlier on.
Yes. I mean, it can be everything can be a blessing. I mean, these are the challenges that need to be maybe have happened in that relationship at that moment. There's something big needed to shift or stir things up for them to get real, because people are, basically not being authentic when they're hiding a part of who they are. And as a result of hiding, that hasn't gone away. So it's leaking out in other areas. The sex creature, as I think of it, that is our own personal sexual persona, is relentless. 5 decades of working to hold it down and hide it. It's still going. Any chance it gets, showing up and saying, look, finally it for some, this era, many, many millions of people have said yes to that part of themselves. And that's, I think that's a beautiful and powerful growth of humanity, to allow our sexuality, which has been vilified for a millennium, basically, to come out, to join the table with the rest of our human psyche.
And so how do you help men to overcome the shame and the fear and the embarrassment, even the humiliation of whatever their private kink or desires are?
Well, there's no simple answer to that, and it's really individual. But the keys that I look at 5 keys to help someone embrace their sexuality. And first is sexual authenticity. That means examining and owning, exploring, discovering, how deep is this pool here, and what's in that, to really come to terms with it and first start there. Yeah, this is my sexuality, or this is the area that I'm going to explore and I feel compelled by. Then once you know that, then the next step is sexual honesty. Now, how do I bring this into the world that's in a way that's in integrity with my agreements and my values and my mission in the world, and et cetera? It doesn't conflict with the rest of my life. And that is where you begin to have the intention to be sexually honest. Then your next step is what I call sexual empowerment. This means literally embodying your truth, because they have to start at the body, because in the body is all that shame and fear and judgment, and that's a physical restraint that's going on. A lot of my customers or clients, when they first call me or talk to me, and I start talking about, well, what does your desire look like? They can barely talk. They're literally being, a part of them is choking. Don't say it. You can't. Don't let anybody know. So they are some of the work starts of learning how to be in your body, starting with how to be present, learning some movement practices, getting into your breath, so you can just start to get more at ease in your body, and more comfortable there. So you can start to practice and allowing your sexual voice to start to speak. It's like an initiation. You have to go through. There's that front end that is like so intense because there is so much physical resistance, and anything physical is also emotional. The body's the analog of the emotional unconscious. So whatever we're feeling emotionally is expressed in the body, and that's why the body is so critical here, because that fear is the emotion of fear is in the body, and that's going to make you clumsy, awkward, restrained. So some work in the body, but that can be overcome a lot just by doing some conscious movement practices and things just where most people haven't allowed themselves to get into their body, in a deep way. So if you just start there, for one thing, is start at the body to get comfortable in your own body. Then the next step is get comfortable. So for instance, like in the realm of kink, if someone would I'd like to flog my partner, and they're kind of like just that awkwardness is in there. I help them with practice. Okay, so I just slow it way down, the stroke, and just breathe and just let it go really slow first and just move at that pace so they can start to feel in their body the more smooth, coordinated action. And
I can relate that because I taught health and physical education. So I remember teaching tennis, and there were people who used the whole arm. Everything was stuck together and tight. And if they would get more fluid, they could use the part that they need to use.
Yeah, so exactly that. And then there's obviously a lot of emotional level work. It's depending on, what someone's life experience. Some people are severely shy, embarrassed, stuck way down that. Their sexuality is behind a wall, a cement wall. And so other people it's not that far away. They can, okay, yeah, I'm ready for this. I've been waiting. And they are more, a little bit of encouragement, they can step right across that threshold and be more engaged. But for others, there is a lot of emotional trauma, fear, shaming, that they've are carrying now messages and internalized things. So there's techniques and things I use to help people basically empower what the desire is, develop practices to empower the desire, to really champion it. I help people find their inner champion to get what they want and to defend against or hold boundaries against what wants to resist what they want. Once you make an aware choice, this is what I want. You have intention. Intention is your anchor. So I help people first then come to, is your intention to be sexually authentic and honest? Yes. Okay, great. That's your anchor. Anytime you drift from that, because fear and shame will morph into our awareness and kind of carry us off, and you notice that, okay, boom, my intention is this. So this is how you keep empowering your intention. And literally, I'll tell people, shout down that part that wants you. Don't do that. That's bad. Listen, you've been telling me that for decades. I'm done for a while. At least, okay, we'll work on this, but for the next 4 hours here, this space is entirely for the pleasure of my sexual, persona and how it wants to engage.
And I would like to reiterate that you are talking about consensual sexuality. So you're not empowering somebody to go after another person and insist that they go along with you if that's not what they want.
No. And there's a very small range of the spectrum that is sociopathic, people operating in a sadistic way that has nothing to do with someone who's has a kink-oriented sexuality. This is just, that part does not wish to harm or itself or other. So if I'm teaching someone about DS, this is part of the things, this is the next thing after I said sexual empowerment is paradox. How do I How can I be someone who wants to flog, spank, tie up, totally dominate, hold down, overpower someone, and at the same time be a good parent, a loving partner, dedicated in the community, be in service in the world, go to church on Sunday, go to the PTA meeting. That's a big conflict for a lot of people. Like, well, I have to be, because we live in a monotheistic culture where things are black and white, good or evil, right or wrong. But the truth is, it's more like yin yang. We are this paradox of, yes, as a sexual persona, that is my natural innate sexuality. I thrive in that context, as do my partners. It's a beautiful dance. When it's right, it's a dance. You're dancing with your partner, like it's like the tango or something, only a really intense tango. But the other side, the point is, you do not lose all the beautiful parts of your humanity by stepping into kink. And that's the paradox. They're both true. Both those aspects are true. Then how do I hold that then in a way that's honorable and heart connected? So like men in love here, we're back to that topic. I mean, having DS and BDSM, they're two different aspects in a way. So like if I'm with my partner, it's heart to heart. My starting point, my desire is as a lover is, I love the intimacy of romance and tenderness and connection. And kink should start from that place. If you're also going to go into the other side of the paradox, the BDSM side, so there's a sacred and profane side. The sacred side is this, as the dominant, that's manifesting the archetype of the king or the queen, if it's, which depending on the situation, but the king is the one that blesses and witnesses, encourages what's true within the person, their partner, that way, sets the vision, and makes it a safe, place to be. And the submissive side can lean towards, service, devotion, surrender, selflessness. I mean, these are very beautiful mythic contexts to be mixing a romantic relationship in. Then once you have that connection established and that heart to heart with your partner, then you can negotiate what is going on the profane side. This is where all the eroticized charges of all the taboo, forbidden, inappropriate things go on. The intensity of eros within them, when you understand how to negotiate, how to have safe words and ways to deal with things that might come up, and et cetera. And there's all kinds of protocols that if you look in kink-oriented sites online, there's all the information you would need to understand how to negotiate to have a risk-aware experience with your partner. But see, I kind of lost the thread there for a second.
Well, you've certainly shared an awful lot about the dynamics of all of this. So why don't you share with us, what if you have a gift to offer, what you can offer, how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah. I have a book out that kind of maps out a lot of what we've talked about here today, called Decoding Your Kink, Guide to Share, Explore, and Enjoy Your Wildest Sexual Desires. It'll really help people start to come to terms with how to be sexually honest, how to understand what these desires are, how they arrive, and how they can then bring them into the world. And that's going to be found on my website, a link to my book there. And I'm offering, I think I said a free copy on for, say, this week on anyone wanting to get it in a digital format. You can use the code. Do you know my code that I said?
No, but it could be on the page. Okay,
it's there somewhere. I forget right now. But yeah, and my website is galenfous.com, GALENFOUS.com. And there's information about how I work with clients there. The book. Also, I didn't mention this yet, the Discover Your Personal Erotic Myths survey, which right now has 2,500 participants, is a great way to start drilling down into that territory of your eros. And learn a lot more about yourself. And one of the comments often at the end of that survey when people comment is like, wow, I realize I'm not alone now. You know, I thought my desires were unacceptable or there was no one else could possibly want that. And then they go see, wow, 2,500 people are all like saying, my goodness, what they're saying. But you can find out what they're saying if you take the survey, and then you can opt in to get a report that lets you view all 2,500 participants' responses in group, and it's amazing what is going on in the sexual psyche.
So this is all at your website?
Yes, GalenFous.com.
Okay, wonderful. So this has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you.
My pleasure as well, Erica. It was a short but great conversation.
Thank you. And to those of you listening, I look forward to speaking to you again soon.